Now we're going to talk about Iraq. The main ideas we have for Iraq are the following. 1. Iraq's physical geography has made the territory a coveted piece of land. 2. Civilization began in Mesopotamia, and many people have tried to control the territory since. 3. Saddam Hussein was an Iraqi dictator who imposed a harsh regime. 4. Iraq is trying to rebuild today, though it has been the center of violence for much of its history. And 5. Iraq has a divided culture today. First, let's look at physical geography. Here we have a political map of the Middle East with Iraq right in the center. The region of Mesopotamia is located in what is now Iraq. Mesopotamia is a very fertile region between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and it is also called the Fertile Crescent. We can see to the right a picture or a drawing of what people thought Mesopotamia looked like in ancient times. It's surrounded completely by desert, but it's a very, very lush and fertile place to live. It's very easy to grow things there. The country of Iraq currently occupies most of what was known as Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is one of the only fertile areas in Iraq because most of the region is covered with either deserts or highlands. Now, many people have controlled the region of Mesopotamia, what is now Iraq. Sumer, S-U-M-E-R, was the first civilization in history. That's it, the first one. And it was in Mesopotamia, in Iraq, which is pretty cool. Sumerians settled in Mesopotamia and built one of the world's first cities there by 3000 BC. Well, we know that people tend to like to conquer things in nice areas. The Babylonians, remember when they took over Palestine and Canaan? Well, they also took over Mesopotamia around the 600s BC. The Babylonian Empire didn't last forever either. We know that the Babylonians kicked the Israelites out of their land, while they also kicked the Sumerians out of their land. The Babylonians were conquered by the Persians. Right? So the Persians took over this entire region as well, including Mesopotamia. All right, Alexander the Great led his Greek armies to conquer Mesopotamia in the 300s BC. Right, so we have many different empires conquering this area, even before the Roman Empire got there. The Roman Empire made their mark on the region, and then the Arab empires, or the Arabs, started to take over the region in the 600s and converted the entire region to Islam. We know that the Ottoman Empire took over the region in the 1500s. Right, so the Ottomans, they were on the losing side of World War I, as we have discussed. And after they lost World War I, much land was taken from them. We know that the British took the area known as Palestine, while they also took the area called Mesopotamia. Britain took control of the region and formed the Kingdom of Iraq in 1932. And when they formed this Kingdom of Iraq, they put a British sympathizer in power. So an Iraqi man was in power, but he had sympathies towards the British crown. So here we have post-World War I Middle East. We have the Independent Republic of Turkey. We have the French Syria, because the French took over the land that's known as Syria. We have Palestine, which was controlled by the British. And we have Iraq, which was controlled by the British as well. And all of these areas used to be part of the Ottoman Empire. Well, the government that the British put in place did not last very long. Iraqi armies eventually overthrew the British-made system in the 1950s. Right? Saddam Hussein was an Iraqi politician who became president. But after he was elected president, he kind of just stayed there and imposed a very harsh regime in Iraq. Hussein became Iraq's president in 1979, but he slowly but surely increased his power until the people eventually just considered him a dictator. Like most dictators we have studied, we can see that Saddam Hussein does have very impressive facial hair. He very strictly controlled the media, just like Stalin, completely flooding it with propaganda. He also controlled the personal freedoms of the people living in Iraq and killed anybody who opposed him. Under Saddam Hussein's leadership, Iraq invaded Iran in 1980. Right? This invasion caused an 8-year war. Right? So we have Iraq and Iran constantly at odds because Iraq invaded Iranian territory in 1980. Well, Iraq wasn't done invading, were they? After they invaded Iran, they started to invade Kuwait. Kuwait is a small country just south of Iran, but they started to invade Kuwait because of their access to oil. Now, because of all these invasions by Iraq under Saddam Hussein, Iraq started to become a concern on the world stage because they were violently invading these countries, not allowing personal freedoms, and they also possibly had weapons of mass destruction. And that's a big no-no. Weapons of mass destruction could be anything from biological weapons to chemical weapons to nuclear weapons. So, for example, um, a weapon of mass destruction that was used during World War I were these diseases, and these bombs were filled with diseases and released so that the people who were affected by the bomb not only were injured by the bomb blast, but they contracted these diseases. Um, Atomic bombs are also another example of weapons of mass destruction. So, Iraq is kind of on every country's bad list for being dangerous and having potentially these weapons of mass destruction and taking away these personal freedoms. So after the invasion of Kuwait, the United States started to fight a brief war with Iraq, and this war is known as the Persian Gulf War. Right? The UN started to place embargoes on Iraq after the war because Iraq would not accept the United Nations terms for peace. And an embargo is just a limit on trade. So the United States fights this war with Iraq because Iraq is behaving poorly. The United States wins. And Iraq has to do certain things to maintain peace. But Iraq isn't doing that. So the United Nations starts to put limits on Iraqi trade. This severely weakened Iraq's economy. There are also several uprisings between two ethnic groups in Iraq in the 1990s, which Saddam Hussein suppressed with violence. And that also caused the United Nations to request a search. Right? So the United Nations not only placed an embargo on Iraq, but they went into Iraq and started to search the country for weapons of mass destruction. They were scared that Saddam Hussein was going to use these weapons of mass destruction against his own people or against another country again. Now, Iraq did not fully cooperate with these actions by the United States, and that led to by the United States and the United Nations, and that led to tensions. Then we have 9/11. We know that 9/11 in 2001 was when the terrorists attacked the World Trade Centers. Well, 9/11 led to tensions between Iraq and the United States because the United States officials believed that Iraq aided these terrorists. President George W. Bush ordered attacks on Iraq after 9/11, and they eventually defeated the Iraqi army and overthrew Saddam Hussein's government. This operation was called Operation Iraqi Freedom. They eventually found Saddam Hussein living in a hole near a house. Saddam Hussein had fled after the United States invaded Iraq, and Saddam Hussein was tried, found guilty, and executed for his crimes against the people of Iraq. Now, Iraq has seen considerable violence. Iraq has been the center of world violence for much of its history, but right now it's trying to rebuild. The United States military has been instrumental in trying to rebuild Iraq after the wars. People have been working to restore electricity and running water in the capital city of Baghdad, as well as trying to rebuild homes. So we're working very, very hard. Democratic elections occurred in Iraq for the first time in the year of 2005, so they're starting to rebuild their government a little bit. The people of Iraq elected a national assembly and they even wrote a new constitution. But Iraq's troubles were not over. There was considerable internal violence and ethnic conflicts, and these conflicts greatly threatened Iraq's stability, despite the efforts that everybody has made. All right, so Iraq is still being threatened by internal issues. All right, now these internal issues have to do with ethnicity and culture. Iraq has a very divided culture today. Most Iraqis are part of one of two ethnic groups. They are either Arab or Kurdish. Arabs are the larger group in Iraq. We can see the country of Iraq right here. Arabs are the largest group in Iraq, and they speak Arabic, which is the country's official language. But there's another group living there, and they call themselves the Kurds. The Kurds are a much smaller ethnic group, and they speak a language called Kurdish. Kurdish is very similar to Arabic, but it's not the same. Most Kurds live in a region called Kurdistan, and we can see Kurdistan outlined in the green right here, and Kurdistan kind of cuts into Iraq just a little bit. Most of the Kurds that live in this region are farmers. Now, the Kurds and the Arabs, they do not get along very well. Some Kurds believe that they should be independent completely from all these other countries. Now, most Iraqis are Muslim. The Arab Iraqis are mostly Shia Muslims, while the Kurdish Iraqis are mostly Sunni Muslims, so there's another cultural difference. On top of the language, you have a slight difference of religion. Now, the tensions between these two groups have grown so profound that, as I said, Kurdistan is trying to declare independence from the rest of Iraq. And these ethnic differences and these ethnic tensions are the exact tensions that are threatening to destabilize the Iraqi government and kind of force Iraq to start from scratch. That's the lesson that we have on Iraq. Now would be a good time to go to your Iraq journal and answer the questions that are in the journal. Get ready for the activity in class tomorrow. Bye.